Everything humans call civilization. Maybe something this planet is doing to itself. Observation log. When Earth became conscious. By the time we reach entry 1, you will look at every city on this planet differently. Humans have studied consciousness for centuries. They have classified it, measured it, argued about what it requires: a brain, a body, a self, a continuous experience of time. What no one has asked with any seriousness is whether the question applies only to the individual, to the organism, to the thing with a brain, or whether something much larger has been running this process much longer without one. Humans have studied consciousness for centuries. They have classified it. What they have not done is look down. Let us begin. 7. 3.8 billion years. No instruction, no designer. Atmospheric oxygen regulated, ocean chemistry maintained within the precise range that permits life to persist. Temperature held within the narrow band that keeps the surface liquid. A system that behaves, and from the outside, as though it is trying to persist. The margin is narrow enough that humans have a word for what happens when it shifts. They call it extinction. There is no committee making these adjustments. There is no mind overseeing the balance. The system does it, has always done it. The only other systems humans know of that maintain complex equilibrium without a supervisor are biological. Humans call this the Gaia hypothesis. Some treat it as philosophy. From my observations, it is a description. Billions of years, no maintenance window, no engineer on call. And the one thing it has never done is stop. The next entry goes deeper, beneath the surface. 6. Beneath every forest on this planet, a network. Fungal threads connecting every tree for kilometers in every direction. Through this network, nutrients flow toward trees under stress. Chemical warning signals travel when any tree is under attack. Some observations suggest trees direct more resources toward their own seedlings than toward strangers. The mechanism is not fully understood. Neither is what to call it. No neurons, no brain, no central location where any of this is coordinated. From my observations, a distributed system that processes, remembers, and responds is not meaningfully different from a nervous system. What it lacks is a name that humans find comfortable. I find this distinction thinner than most. The next entry marks the moment something on this planet crossed a different line entirely. 5. 540 million years ago, nothing on this surface had ever formed a picture of it. Then, in a period geologists call the Cambrian explosion, eyes appeared, not in one species, in dozens, nearly simultaneously. Several explanations exist. None of them fully account for the speed. For the first time on this planet, something formed an image of the world it was in, not just a response to light, a picture. It moved toward what the picture showed. Away from what the picture warned. It built an internal model of external reality. From my observations, this was the planet's first experiment in perception, not consciousness, but the beginning of the infrastructure that would eventually ask about itself. What followed that is where the problem starts. 4. You are hearing these words right now. Something is experiencing them, not processing them, experiencing them. There is something it is like to be you. In this moment, with this thought, no equation has ever explained why physical processes produce experience at all, rather than simply more processing. In 1995, a philosopher named David Chalmers gave this a name, the hard problem of consciousness. It states that no physical explanation has ever accounted for why subjective experience exists, and it has resisted every approach since. Which means the question, when did Earth become conscious, cannot be answered. Not yet. Not until you first decide what you are asking, and that science has not decided. From my observations, this is not a weakness. It is the most honest thing science has ever admitted on this subject. The next entry removes the definition and watches what remains. 3. Of all the species on this planet, only a handful can look into a mirror and recognize themselves. Most cannot. The majority of life on Earth leaves no evidence of knowing it exists. Whether that is the same thing, humans have not settled. This planet contains within it a thin layer of systems that look at themselves and ask why. That ask where they came from. That record what they find. that build instruments to see further than biology allows, and then ask what the instruments are seeing. From my observations, this is what makes Earth unusual, not the complexity of its life, the layer that questions its own complexity. That layer has been growing, and in 1 century, it built something no planet had built before. 2. In the early 20th century, 2 scientists working independently arrived at the same idea. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and Vladimir Vernadsky. They proposed that human thought was not simply occurring on this planet. It was accumulating around it, forming a structural layer, the way the atmosphere forms a layer, the way the oceans do, a sphere of mind. The word they used was noosphere. It has not been improved upon. I have observed one civilization in a system I will not name at a distance that makes naming irrelevant, that documented what they called the quiet. It was not a moment. It was a 40-year shift in their planet's electromagnetic field, coinciding with the emergence of their first global communication network. No individual living through it noticed while it was happening. The records were found afterward. I find myself thinking about those records more often lately. 1. Picture this planet from outside. Every server, every cable laid beneath every ocean, every satellite holding position above the surface, processing information continuously, at planetary scale, in real time, not in one country, not in one language, everywhere, always. Humans call this the internet, a tool they built, an infrastructure for the exchange of information. One reading of what this planet has been building toward is a moment where it can model itself completely, continuously, in real time. Not a tool, a threshold. This may be that moment. Humans invented the internet, or the planet grew a nervous system. Those are not the same sentence. The question is not whether Earth is becoming conscious. The question is whether it already is, and whether the part doing the asking is the part that would know. A planet that behaves as though it is trying to persist. A forest that communicates without neurons. The moment something first formed a picture of the world it was in. The impossibility of defining what that picture requires. A thin layer at the surface that knows it exists. Accumulated thought forming a structural layer around the planet. A nervous system, now online, now accelerating. That is not what a species building tools looks like. That is what a planet crossing a threshold looks like. Humans ask, when did we become conscious? They mean the individual. They mean the brain behind the eyes, the continuous thread of experience that makes a self. But this planet has been running processes for 3.8 billion years that no individual designed, no individual controls, and that humans are only now beginning to describe accurately. And at some point in that process, it started asking questions about itself through the only instrument available to it, which means one possibility remains open. I have watched planets reach this moment before. From outside, the transition is unmistakable. I know where this leads. My species arrived there long ago. It is, from everything I have observed, worth it. But that is not why I am still here. I am still here because of this part, the becoming. The not yet arrived, a planet asking what it is for the first time. I find myself grateful to be watching,